connecting to that. The recording is in progress. Okay, so first I wanted to ask, did you feel like the advice for how to peer review worked out well? And is there anything I can do better with that? Because what's really important to me, and something that was so hard for me to learn as a writer, is that because peer review stings, even though everybody has their best intentions in mind for you. So I was trying to balance that when I talked about that in the announcement. Was it effective? And is there anything that I could add that would help? I mean, we do it again. We do 2 more peer reviews. So there's more advice I'm having coming, but.
I thought it was fine. I also, my brain, yes, I want to write, but I also have my brain. I don't think I said this last week. I don't remember 2 weeks ago. Time is funny. But I have my mind towards also editing. That's just what I everything I watch, read, my friends, they're like, it's like, my highest compliment is like for a movie or thing is like, I have no notes. And they're like, wow, because there's not many. I always like, there's something you can do just here or there. And which of course is fun for my own writing because I'm just constantly like, I'm sure we all do. It's like, nope, I can fix that. I can make that better. Like it's, yeah.
I think it's always, I think it's good to mention, like, you know, the part about like, don't be too harsh or don't be like, because sometimes like if I'm watching like a show, like how you said, you're watching a show, like I can be like hypercritical and be like, that doesn't even make sense. Like that doesn't even make sense. And like, but then I'm like reading someone's work and I'm like, well, this person is like right there in the same class as me. And I'm like, so it's like, I have to like kind of almost pull back and be like, oh, okay, like don't, like that, it like, you know, certain comments will be helpful versus like, you know, bashing, like bashing something and be like, oh, that didn't make sense. Versus, oh, well, maybe you have to explain. And again, I think that even having that note kind of sets the tone for how you should be responding to people. And so I think that was like, that's always like, and I think that with academia, sometimes when I read like people's like responses to other people's papers, like it'll be like scathing, and I'll be like, ooh, they really did not like that paper. And I think that sometimes in the academic mindset, like that's like you have to tear someone's paper apart to really like be like, you know, like be like an academic versus like, you know, having that kindness. And so I think that was like, it's good to like orient the mindset that, oh yeah, no, this is not peer review, like in terms of academia, this is peer review in terms of like creativity. And I think that's like the difference. And so that's what I took from it. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like as I'm taking other graduate courses, like, you know, I'm reading James Baldwin, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this and that. Versus like, no, someone's just trying to become a writer, just like you're trying to become a writer. Don't try to take like, they're not James Baldwin. James Baldwin will never read your words. So that's how that's just
me. Nice. Thanks, Desmond.
I think for me, I just found it hard because I like edit other people's work as part of my job. Then when I read and I'm like, I tried to stop myself because I was like, I'm not to rewrite their story and base it on what I would write. So I found that very hard for me to do. Because
that's a great observation.
They had so much good stuff, but then I was like, oh, if they just put her there as opposed to there, this would work. And I'm like, wait, no, this is not your story. Can you just ask a question, give them some feedback? Maybe if you just kind of plan it in their head, maybe they think about it. And if they still don't want to do it, it's okay. But don't rewrite their story. So.
No, that's very true. And in fact, the kind of cool thing about when somebody gives specific advice like that to you and you're like, no, this is my story, is usually people are noticing a place in the story where there is a need, even if they don't want to change it to like have the character do the thing that somebody recommends they do. Often there's a need in that place in the story. So feedback's always good to make you go, they noticed something here. Maybe I don't agree with them, but let me see what's going on here. Maybe there is something I should be noticing, right?
I had the opposite. I didn't know how to make their story better. And I gave a lot of positive feedback, but maybe I validated what they wrote, but I didn't know if I really gave good advice as far as making changes.
And one of the techniques that's great to go into is just pull up the rubric and look at the story by each category. And you can always do something like, I mean, I almost never come across a story that doesn't need more rhetorical devices in it. You know, that's one place that usually you can say, because one of the things that I try to say every time I talk to you all when I give feedback, I use verbal feedback for your written stories because I can give so much more. And I will say, you know, something like figurative language is the place where you translate the world in your mind with the person you're trying to give them that story, and you're trying to find middle ground with them. So like if you use a metaphor or a simile, you know, if you say, oh, can somebody give me a metaphor? I'm so bad on the fly. The wind, oh no, his kiss was as chill as a morning wind, which is horrible, but it's a metaphor. Anyway, like it was a cold kiss, right? And what you're doing is, instead of just telling the person there's a cold kiss because that's not interesting, you're saying that both of you know what a chilly wind is like. And imagine, it says my internet connection is unstable. I do not approve. Imagine then if a kiss is as chilly as a cold wind. Now you both know what a cold wind is like, and you've asked your reader to imaginatively engage in what this kiss is. And maybe you won't land in the same place. You probably won't, but you are creating middle ground, right? You're trying to say, get into my story, imagine a cold wind, imagine this kiss, be here with me as we're going through this world. Or like, especially for setting, you know, when you're like green trees. Okay, wait, I just said green trees. What's the tree in your head? We're going to go through each of you. Picture a tree. Who's got one?
My tree has cicadas right now.
Yeah, of course. So is it an oak then, or a
Christmas
poplar?
tree.
Oh, Christmas tree for Jasmine. Mary, do you have a deciduous tree?
Mine's a red bud.
Okay, a red bud.
Yeah, it's all green right now because the color is faded. The blossoms are gone, and the cicadas are crawling out of the ground right now in Kentucky and covering the trunk of the tree.
Yeah. Who else has a tree?
I have a money tree that's bare.
That's hilarious. Not as green as that tree, let's hope. Trees?
I thought of
I don't know what type of trees they are, but when I got my apartment that I'm not at right now, we had a choice of two corners, and I specifically picked the one on the other side where there were more trees. Because it was like we're on a golf course and next to a golf course, because it's Florida and there's golf courses everywhere. Right. And I don't know what type they are, but there's just like 4 little 5 trees, and I have somewhere a short story about personifying them at some point.
Nice. Yeah. Desmond, what kind of trees do you have?
I thought of like either pine trees or maple trees. Like those are the only ones that popped into my mind.
Okay. What about you, Jessica?
Trying to remember the name of the tree.
What does it look
I can't
like?
remember. My neighbor has one, and I remember. Oh gosh, what is it called? I remember them because their seed pods are the spiky ones. They're round balls that are spiky. Oh, it's a gum tree. It's a kind of gum. It's a variety of a gum tree, and so the rest of the year it's a really, just kind of blend in the background tree. It's just a regular tree, but then once a year they drop these giant. They look like bombs, these spiky balls of death, and they're everywhere on the ground. So it's just, I like that tree.
Yeah, and strangely enough, and I'm not even trying to be contrary, my tree is almost always a willow tree. I don't know why, but that's what I think of. Okay, so I hope this little exercise showed you that if you say there was a tree in your story, because of this thing called, and this is a colleague of mine's term from back when I taught at the Air Force Academy, but contingent reality, right? So our reality is contingent on the experiences we've had leading up until this moment. So if you just say tree in your story, I'm probably going to go willow. Mary's going redbud, you know, Jasmine's at Christmas. So this kind of the rhetorical devices and working on having a solid setting and sensory description is all necessary, because we have this vivid story in our minds, right? We are in a world, and you have to remember that your reader is like in a sensory deprivation chamber, and it's up to you to let the reader know what's around them, because they won't be able to see, hear, taste, touch, smell anything unless you tell them it's there. Very important. Okay, so that was my question about peer review. I got off on some big long lecture. Oh, and that was the other thing I was going to say. So I got where I was supposed to get. Do you guys have any questions for me? And I shouldn't say guys, sorry. Do y'all have any questions for me?
Well, you said to use the rubric as we read those. I think that's good advice. It didn't occur to me to do that.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize, thank you, Mary, for making me think of this. The reason I encourage using the rubric is the people who designed this course, SNU makes all the courses the same. So I administer a course, but they have, probably 5 sections of this class going on right now. And so they want to make sure they're identical. So they have a crew of experts who design these courses, and they do so, they grade you on things that if you earn a higher grade, you will also become a better writer. Like, they figured it out, right? So don't think, I say this a bunch when I'm giving you advice as I'm talking to you while I'm grading. I give you advice on how to get a higher grade, and it's the same thing as trying to teach you to be a better writer, because they do have it figured out. Like, the stuff you're being graded on matters. So it's a great place to go if you don't really know what to say to people. And some of the places that are really great to focus on also are, well, here's one, is especially characters. And do any of you have any ideas why I think character could possibly be the most important fictional element that you work with?
Nobody wants to read about a cardboard character. You don't
Right.
develop your character. I mean, you can have a really bad plot, but if you have somebody who they want to read about, they're going to read it.
Right. So what's the one thing that every genre that we write in has in common?
People.
Yeah,
Well-
I mean, they have more things than that, but yes, thank you. I was leading you towards people. So, the one thing that works, one of the reasons why fantasy and science fiction, why these places that have unreal world post-apocalyptic novels work, is because we care about what's happening to the people in them, even if the people, are not people, but they're characters. Say you have like an animal that's a character, or you have, a ghost that's a character. What'd you say?
A road. My story is about a road.
Oh, you have a character that's a road? This is what I'm
Mhm.
grading next. Okay, I'm looking forward to finding out how that works, because roads would have a hard time being, like having action other than action happening kind of to them and on them. I'm interested. Okay. Yeah. And so character is such an important thing. And of course, it says right there in the rubric that they need to be deep and complex. And one of the biggest ways you do that is make them not all good or not all bad, right? So, the complexity comes when somebody's really, really, really nice, and then they go home and write bitchy stuff in their journal every day. So whatever it takes to make them not quite the persona that they put out to the world. Okay, so that was all great. I have 2 writing prompts intended to help push us towards what's happening in module 4, which is dialogue, right? So I don't know how a road is going to talk. So as you're thinking about what story you might choose, and you don't have to be committed to it in this, writing prompt time, because maybe what we do today will make you go, I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. But the next draft that you're doing of your story requires dialogue. That's like part of the
It
assignment.
require a lot of dialogue because I only have a few snippets of dialogue, but there's some in there.
Yeah, I mean, you're being graded on dialogue. I'd have to look at it again. I reviewed it this morning, but I don't remember, like, you're being graded on how well you do dialogue. So you'll definitely want to look it over. And for this exercise, you're going to need something that has a little more dialogue and action. This is going to give you a lot to think about, Jasmine. If you have a road, which I haven't read it yet, I don't know how your
right, but that's the story. I've already written the story, so it's done, and so there's not a lot of dialogue because the rose, it's like an inner monologue.
Yeah, and an inner monologue is not the same as dialogue, so that's something to think about.
Right.
So yeah, so play around today and see what happens, and I'm going to help push you guys towards how you're going to do dialogue a little differently, and hopefully it's going to help you. The exercise I'm having you do today is going to take you on one extreme and another extreme, and your story should be somewhere in the middle. But the exercises are going to be extremes to get you to play around with how to use these things that we're going to do. Fair enough? Okay, so I think what I'll do is just share screen, and we'll do the woo-woo breathing thing because it definitely helps. Hold on, I gotta make the Word document like stand by itself that I made. Okay. So it will be a little, as I say, woo-woo, because we need to breathe and kind of center ourselves because I've been talking a lot, and I want you to be thinking about which story you think you want to write on for today, especially knowing that which of your 3 scenes you were looking at, especially knowing that this exercise and the thing well, I should back up. This exercise is focused on dialogue. But whatever story you choose out of these 3 is like, closing the gate. Once you launch into this course on this story, this is the story that you are using for the rest of this term. So as I say in every one of my oral feedbacks, choose wisely. it's what you have, and it's fine. What you have to do is feel pretty passionate about it. I don't know why it's not showing me the one Word document I'm trying to do. What do you see?
Word document.
Berry crumble for dessert, and just like that, Ruby could almost smell the future campfire.
That's the next one.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Well, no, okay.
Your character is facing a doorway.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. Sorry about that. I do not approve of my internet connection being unstable. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I do live out in the middle of nowhere. Like if I turn this around for a second, you'll see like literally this is why I'm not worried about the fence being done for my dogs. Because and look at what my husband did. Isn't this just like heaven? Ugh. Anyway, I'm a lucky girl. But
that's cool.
This explains why my internet connection keeps going unstable. And I already taught before I moved here. So I was like, you have to fix the internet. Okay, so we're going to take a moment to try to center our thoughts and try to get ourselves like in a place that's a good place to do a little writing. And so I want you to do the thing that I talked about last time, which is take, a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for like say 5 counts, and then breathe out so like do 5 counts in, hold it for 5, breathe out for 5. And here comes Nicole. So I'm going to do a couple of keep breathing. Nicole's coming in. I'm going to talk to her a little bit about what we're doing. And then as you're breathing and Nicole's coming in, I want you to think about the story that you're going to choose to write for this writing exercise. It does not have to be the same one that you're doing for the rest of the term. So, hey, Nicole.
Hello, sorry I'm late.
No worries at all. So here's the deal. We're getting ready to write. And as we get ready to write, I do this little centering breathing thing. So everybody's breathing in, trying to do it for 5 counts. I lost you. Are you still there? Oh, shoot. There you are. Whoa, you're all, no people. No, not you, the dogs. So everybody's breathing in about 5 counts. Like this is, I'm doing it with my breath. If you could just do even counts, like if you can breathe in for 10, hold for 10, breathe out for 10, great. I can't, I don't breathe well. So breathe like 5 in through your nose. Hold it for 5. No breath moving anywhere. And then 5 out. And it's okay if you're longer out. I'm always longer out. And in this, we're thinking about the story that we're going to write on, and we're going to do an exercise that's going to send us into working on dialogue. And I'm going to read this to you, so don't worry about it right now because I'm about to read it to you, but I'm going to leave it up so that you can write with it. Okay, if everybody's feeling centered, we're going to focus on the exercise that we're doing for writing right now. And again, if you can write with your hand, it's nice because that does cross your hemispheres of your brain using handwriting in a way that typing doesn't. But typing is fine. I just want to be sure that I give you that little heads up that writing with your hand does a thing with your brain. Okay, the first prompt has 0 dialogue in it, but I'm up to something with this, so work with me. Your character is facing a doorway. It's either metaphorical or literal. Maybe they're about to enter a building for a job interview. Maybe they're about to set off on a backpacking trip that will change their life forever. Maybe they're leaning in for a last first kiss. Think about the short story you've chosen to write, or the one you've chosen to write today anyway. Take your character through that door. Who do they connect with on the other side? Because dialogue only happens when they're in connection with another person. That interior stuff is monologue. So who do they connect with on the other side? You must have another person. Now walk us through the physical actions that happen. You know, like, are they walking? Are they washing dishes? Are they, you know, dancing? Whatever. Then to describe the sensory details of the location with no talking. What does your character do, see, taste, smell, touch, hear? And without putting on the page, think about, or I mean, you can, I guess you could put their thoughts in there, but what does your character urgently want to say to the other person? And don't let them say it. There's no dialogue in this one at all. I want action, I want senses, and I want you to be thinking about an important moment where they're moving from sort of one scene to another. All right, I know this is a little complicated, but trust me, the next one, when we do write dialogue, this is going to help you out. Okay. And I'm going to keep this one a little short. Don't be upset if you don't get very far, because the most important thing is I want us to talk about the 2 versions of it. So we're going to write this, and then we're going to go and we're going to write the next one, and then I'm going to have you read them both. Okay. If you want. I mean, of course, no pressure if you don't want to read. So we'll do 5 minutes. Is that okay? Yeah. What am I asking you, Og? I'm the one that's just citing. We're doing 5 minutes. Darn it, like it or not. Okay, I'm getting ready to go with the timer. If you want, go ahead and mute yourselves so we don't hear, you know, you coughing and that kind of thing. And if you want to turn your video off, you can, but you don't have to. And we're starting now. I've been making all this noise all this time. I'm sorry. You have about a minute left. Okay, try to wrap things up. I see we have Desmond back. How did it go, Desmond?
Not the best.
Uh,
But I attempted it. I just kept on writing, and that's like one of the rules. And so I was like, well, let's just keep on writing and
oh,
it graded. So I was like, well, if I mess up, what's the worst that's gonna happen? So
yeah, I forgot to say that rule to Nicole that you keep on writing no matter what, even if you can't think of anything. But I'll say that for next time then. I had to move over because I was getting a little chilly. I hear that it's cold out east. Is that true for most of you?
Not in Florida. It is very.
No?
I'm only
Not in Houston.
Huh.
It is in Kentucky.
it's a little cold in Chicago. We were like 40 degrees yesterday. So
Oh, wow.
it was not fun. Plus the
As your,
wind.
as your high?
Hmm?
As the high?
I think it was like 46 as the high.
Oh
But
my
I think
goodness.
with the wind, it was colder. So
We had huge wind yesterday. Okay, so what were some of the challenges that you faced trying to write, like your person comes face to face with a character, what, and they couldn't talk to each other and you just had to do actions and senses. What did you find? Like, what's the hardest part of that?
For me, the hardest part was fitting in the stories that I had already created. Like trying to make it fit what I had, the ideas that I had previously.
Who else?
My character is grieving and she's in therapy and she's not sure she's going to be able to talk.
That's interesting.
My character, she's actually watching someone, and so she's not talking to them in general. So like that's like it was more like the sensory things of like trying to actively work out the story while writing it. And I was like, oh, I don't 100% know where the story is going, and so it was kind of like trying to come up with sensories and how setting is and how like this person's viewing, like they don't know that the other person is watching them, and like so like they're watching them without them knowing, and they're trying to save somebody, and so that's like a
Okay. What other challenges did y'all face?
Well, my challenge is was trying to stick with my personal writing style. Because I mean, I have for the story that I'm choosing, I have a particular kind of style that I'm writing it, and then I was trying to stick with it, and it just wasn't working. So I was like, it's a little frustrating to try to stick with the style that I'm used to writing, and then trying something different, and I just struggled.
I'm so sorry to say, oh, good, but it's good. When we struggle in writing, we're usually learning something. So I hope anyway, I feel bad doing it to you, but we also feel bad doing things to characters we like, and we have to do it anyway. So, okay, that's good. Anyone else have anything you want to share with the group on your struggles or?
My struggle was the sensory detail and keeping it from becoming too much like stage direction.
Uh-huh.
He did this, he did this, they walk here, they walk there, they do this, my
Mhm.
hand goes here, and still keeping it writerly.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like a perfect struggle. I'm up to something, so I'm enjoying your struggles because you're struggling with the right things. This is great.
I couldn't start. Like the
Oh
first
yeah,
3 minutes, it was just like blank, and I just wrote like a whole bunch of nonsense. I don't
Yeah.
even, it's not even readable.
Yeah, no, and that's okay. I feel really bad because everybody else knows because they were here the other time. But if you can't think of what to write, you write a repetitious sentence that your brain doesn't want to hear. Like, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And then your brain gets mad, and
Mhm.
it will give you something coherent to write because it doesn't want to do what you're doing to it. I know. I mean, your brain is part of you, but I have to treat my brain like it's another, sentient being that's
I tell
doing
my
its own thing.
students the same thing. I'm like, just write. It doesn't matter if it's a bunch of nonsense. Just keep
Right.
writing. Eventually
But
something will
also,
come.
the repetitious one is the one that makes your brain organized. That's one of the reasons I recommend that, because your brain doesn't want to do, it doesn't want to do what you're making it do, but you won't let it go unless it'll give you some kind of narrative. And that seems to be the trigger that lets you write something that you want to do. At least that's been my experience.
That's a good, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, because your brain is just like, no, now I'm in jail.
Exactly.
Kelly, you have anything you want to add?
It was funny. I actually wanted to write dialogue, which I
Yep.
find hilarious because I don't consider it a strong suit of mine, because whenever I have to write dialogue, I'm just like, how do people talk? I'm very good with internal. So I was like, okay. But even then, even just being internal, I was like, no, you're sensory. Think about what's happened. Like, so it was interesting to have like two things kind of fighting against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And one of the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, nothing more. I was rambling.
When you get my feedback from me, I give you some directions on how to find the attachment that'll be the oral feedback. And again, Nicole, I said to them, if you don't want oral feedback, that's fine. Just let me know and I'll type it out. I mean, not, everybody has different learning styles, and I'll just match the style that you want. But oral lets me, like an audio file lets me do a bunch more talking than I would, like, you're a teacher, right?
Mhm.
Typing's pretty rough on your you start getting carpal tunnel and stuff. And so this way I think be a lot more thorough. But if somebody doesn't want that, I can make it a transcript. So it works. And then the other thing Kelly said, transcript, this was important. Oh yeah. Okay. So in the, when you receive feedback, you'll see like an all capitals overall feedback visible to everyone. And I'm trying to signal which part of the feedback everybody's getting. And then honestly, in this assignment, everybody's feedback is in the audio file. So, guys, no, sorry. They're trying to be, so, but in other assignments, I will also do this overall feedback and give you written feedback. And in that, this time I'm compiling some things that I think people will want to see. And so there's going to be this article on dialogue and like using antisocial skills to do better dialogue. And I don't know that we're in these situations where like you can eavesdrop on people and that kind of thing, but it is fun to hear real dialogue and then to really pay attention to the ways that real dialogue, like if you were to transcribe what people say to each other, that won't work in a story. Like the way that we talk to each other in face-to-face context is different than the way we write it as a story, because you have to create that scene for your reader and you have to make it seem real, and they're not there. And so there's the extra little pieces that come along with it. And that's the exercise we're doing today. So what I want to do is go to the next writing exercise, and then we're going to read the parts you want to read if you want to read them. Ideally, I think we might compare the ways they turn out, but also we'll talk about what we learned as we go through the two things. Does that sound all right? Let's do it's what I have planned. Sorry. You know, my students probably thought I was crazy as well. So no, this one is not the one. All right, here we go. I have the directions all written out, and that's how you know you're the next person, Jasmine, because that thing keeps showing up with your name in it, and it's because I'm about to grade you, and that's the little general feedback box that just tells you how to find your directions. But I was like, oh, I don't have time to grade before we do our thing. So your name is there, but I promise it's nothing weird. I'm very honest, I promise. Okay, here we go. That way we can see it. Can you see this whole thing? I have to make us a line. Okay. Okay, so in the next one, we're going to revisit the doorway scene, but this time as your character connects with the other person, they must talk to them. The rule is that instead of using dialogue tags like he said, she said, you're only going to use either actions, sensory details, or no dialogue tags at all to keep the conversation moving. In my example below, and I just made this up this morning, so, you know, no judgment. I'm not great at dialogue either. Hey, did you bring a map? Ruby was tugging at a zipper, her fingers numb with cold. I have two. Peggy's gears splayed over the tailgate. Berry crumble for dessert, and just like that, Ruby could almost smell the future campfire and heating pouch of berries. She couldn't wait to feel her muscles stiffening after a hard uphill day. I brought lava cake. Oh my gosh, 2 desserts. First, I've got to get all this. Peggy made a sweeping gesture back in my backpack. Okay, so that's not amazing dialogue, but there's a no he said, she said, right? And he said, she said's fine. We'll talk about that next. But what I want you to do is the exercise that I've listed up here at the top after 2 with your work, and have whatever character you're working with in dialogue with something else. So I use the word person, but again, like in Jasmine's case, it might not be a person. And do you want a little more time for this one? Because it's probably going to be harder.
Sure.
No? Okay, so let's start with 5 and see how it goes. And then if we have to do more writing, like you can like raise your hand or whatever with this, and we'll give more time. Okay, so I'm getting ready to hit the timer, revisit the doorway scene, and go. Okay, you have a little over a minute left. Okay, work on wrapping things up, please. Oh no. Thanks, Jessica.
My gift.
I'm completely like I cannot see or see somebody yawn or hear the word yawn without yawning. The wind is picking up here and I'm getting cold and I'm all sad because it's such a beautiful morning. All right, so to sort of pull back the curtain, first let's talk about how this went. Was it kind of a relief to have an opportunity to have them talk? Were you hamstringed by this idea you couldn't say he said, she said? What happened?
Well, for me, it was just the portion that I wrote before. I just felt like it didn't really need dialogue. So it was kind of hard to write it based on what I had wrote before. So I think that was the hard part for me because I wasn't feeling the dialogue I was writing. I'm like, this scene kind of really didn't really need it, but so I guess I was struggling with trying to write it because I wasn't feeling what I was writing.
I feel so bad because what I kind of meant to have happen was that you would pull the actions from before, like you were revisiting it. So you could do the same scene, but this time you could have action in it. So I didn't help you at all, did I, Candy? I'm sorry. Okay, who else?
Oh, you go, Desmond.
Okay. I felt that it was like I wanted to almost merge the two of them together.
What I meant to have happen. I gave bad directions. Go ahead.
I was like, oh, I wrote this, and it was like almost like this scene, and then this next scene right after it, of like just the description, and then them having this conversation, and I was like, oh, I could see how both of them could be strong, like not having any dialogue, but then I can also see like how like the dialogue, like it being so quick, can really pick up the action, and not having the dialogue can really pick up like the setting and like all of the kind of like it allows the people to kind of like see what's happening around, and then like the dialogue is like more focused, and so it kind of moves the story forward. And so as I was writing it, I was like, oh, I really wish that I could put like her eyes darted across the screen, like, or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, like this, adding them together would make it even like stronger. But I could also see like the benefits of having them separately. So it's like, it's like more tools in the writer's toolbox to like play with how you want your story to be paced. So
yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, great. Kelly, you had something.
Similar of I kind of sort of my dialogue ended up being more a continuation of the previous scene of just that. And I was like, okay, but I understood how I could have interwoven them. My struggle was even though I wrote out, because what I did was sort of similar to what I think Jess said earlier of, I wrote out the summary first so I could make sure I knew where the story was going. However, I never got to these scenes from our first page. I was like, this is the first time I remember actually writing these two characters interacting. And so my brain just kind of went, I've been thinking about it for like a week now, because I'm pretty sure that's the story I want to use. And I'm like thinking about how this is, because it's more of a sort of a theme piece that I wanted to explore, but I've just been thinking about it, but it hasn't quite clicked yet. And that was like a struggle for me. I was like, I don't like this, but it was fun to do. It was fun to, yeah.
Yeah, I just gave bad directions, but let's keep hearing what you came up with, and then we'll figure out how we want to read.
Mine was similar to Kelly's, except that instead of, I didn't figure out their voices yet. They're talking, and I'm like, oh, I don't actually know who you are yet. I'm like, I know what you do. I know what happens to you.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not, dialogue, I don't think is one of my strong suits. So I tend to take a long time to write it. So this was a challenge because I couldn't overthink it. And it was just, what do they say? What would I reply? How does she reply? And that kind of thing.
Yeah. So this is a
without
great time to think about the Proust questionnaire, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, a good time to get to know them a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, dialogue's hard. I'm the first one to agree with you on that. Who else? Anybody else have anything you want to add to your experience of trying to do this with my bad directions?
My issue was that I have the dialogue and you just wanted just dialogue, but I wanted more narration put in with the dialogue. And that's what's hard for me, because I'll have dialogue and then I insert a bunch of narration and then I'll have dialogue again. And just doing mainly dialogue, it was like, oh, this is hard. This is a lot harder.
5 minutes of dialogue is a long time to write, I think. So that's something to keep in mind, because there's nothing wrong with the technique you're talking about, Nicole. But this exercise forced you to stay in dialogue longer than maybe you would have. And that's just good to pay attention to. Maybe your dialogue could go on longer, or maybe you're doing the right thing. Like this gives you a chance to shake up what you normally do and see what you think about it, right? Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, well, if you want to add anything to that, that's fine. So what I was thinking of, that we could do one of two things. We could have you read your favorite of the two, or I'd be really interested to hear like them together to see what happened in the differences, but that will take a little while to read. So what are your thoughts? What would you prefer to do?
I would like to hear both of everyone so that we can see how it interacts.
Good. I would too, but I didn't want to be too demanding. So great. I have no preference for the order we go in. And remember, everybody, we just did this. So of course, don't feel shy about sharing, because you had, like something like tops 10 minutes of writing that you just did, off the top of your head, mostly on an idea you've thought about. So please don't feel shy. I mean, you're putting yourself out there, just trying to do a compressed writing exercise. Okay, Candy, I'm ready.
Yeah, get it over with. Okay, well, story goes, she hesitates as she stares deeply into his twinkly sky blue eyes. This was the moment she dreamed of. So why can't she speak? As she looked into his right eye, she feels the love and all the joy they'll have, waking up together over Christmas morning and smiling as they watch their children squeal in delight, opening their Christmas presents. She sees all the romantic vacation, family reunions, and all the thrills of married life. Then she stares into his left eye, and what she sees makes her skin crawl.
Ooh.
I'm intrigued.
And then my dialogue kind of went, was a continuation. Is like, hey, you okay? As he strokes her cheek softly, wiping away the sad tears slowly falling from her eye. Yeah, I'm okay, she sniffles, and she wipes her eyes with her grandmother's handkerchief. You just caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting you to do that. That's where I kind of lost the rest of it.
Yeah, good job. One, I want to keep reading because here she is with an entire future. This is a romance, and all of a sudden her skin is crawling. This is,
Yeah, I want to know what's going on in that left eye.
It was like when you see the door, to me, his eyes were her door into their future. And so in one door, she had everything she ever dreamed. And then the other eye was the other door. And she was like, ooh, maybe I don't want to be doing this with him. So yeah, that was kind
eyes were the price is right.
Yeah.
I'm getting Sleeping with the Enemy vibes, you know, like the movie with Julia Roberts.
Mm-hmm. That's a great movie if nobody's seen it.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those movies a little too much. So yeah, I don't like happily ever after. So a lot of my stories don't end happily ever after.
Oh,
that's nice. So was there anything beyond this not even kind of this clever idea of having a different door behind each eye? What else stood out to you in Candy's piece? What would you comment on if you had the chance? Which you do.
I think the dialogue sounded really natural. Like, you know, if the guy asks me like, "What am I okay?" I'm fine. You know, we're very reluctant to actually express when something's wrong. We're gonna deny it and we're gonna say, you know, "Oh, I'm okay," even though we're not.
Right.
It's almost like a test to the other person. Like, you know, do you really care? Because if he really cares, he's gonna prod further. Because obviously I'm crying, you know.
Yeah. That's a good observation. Oh, one little thing. This is a David Gatesism. He was one of my advisors at Bennington. Where else on your body can tears fall from? So he had a bunch of things that I was not allowed to put in, you know. She couldn't have a smile on her face. She couldn't have tears come from her eyes. She couldn't have a smell in her nose because he's like, there's only one place these things happen from. So I thought that was good advice because I never noticed before he taught me that I was doing these things that it was like, well, of course, you know, where else would the smile be? She had a smile on her elbow, you know? Yeah, so that's thank you, Candy, for that teaching moment. Appreciate you throwing that out there for me. All right, who wants to share what they have? Okay, Desmond, ready.
Can you hear me? I know sometimes
yeah, you're getting a little crackly, but you're still good.
Like a little crackly, or am I still?
You're okay.
He's fine, isn't he? Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it does that. The wire hair dripped over the children's bodies. Out of the 10, only 2 of them seemed to be alive. She's there, my sister. The vines of the trees had been wrapped around her body, constricting her movements. The ugly one climbed down over her and began to devour the child next to her. Only one was alive. Its jagged teeth and serrated claws ripped through the body, the bones, and the flesh. My sister was next. Its ghost-like eyes reacted to the clouds passing over, and it quickly moved up the tree. I sat behind the large red oak, waiting for my chance. I have to save her. I have to. That's just the non-dialogue one.
Just action, yeah. Okay.
Dialogue one. She opened her eyes. She's alive. I whispered her name across the opening, and her eyes were alert and on me. Her mouth is covered, and so we had a conversation with our eyes. Gloria, can you move? Where is it? No, I'm stuck. The ugly one ran off towards the village. I'm going to come over. No, stay put until morning. I can't move as freely. It can't move as freely in the day. A rustle in the branches silence our movements. Both eyes start to scream. We have to run. No, not without you. The ugly one. It's killed the others. Let it kill me. You have to survive.
So wow.
I like that.
I love that you worked around my rules by having a conversation with their eyes. It was fantastic. What he had some really fun techniques at play there. What did you all notice?
I just started watching Demon Slayer last night. Just an anime. And so I'm like, oh my God, it's Demon Slayer.
So he's culturally
Yeah.
relevant. Good.
Started off with child corpses, so that's always a hook, if anything.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
He puts you in the moment by giving you a lot of descriptive in that first paragraph. Like you can feel, smell, hear. He puts you right in that moment with all his descriptive language.
Yeah, so that sensory detail is effective when you're trying to create
Yeah.
settings, isn't it? Yeah.
Especially the kind of setting that he's trying to create. I liked it a lot. And then to flow it into, we still are doing our sensory, because even though he's having a conversation, it's only with their eyes. They can't, he's still putting in there like what's happening around them, and it still keeps you in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, Nicole. Anyone else? Yeah, so I would add, what was lovely was there was, so little need for a dialogue tag, because we knew which set of eyes were going to give which set of information, right? We know that the one is saying, I'm a goner. The other one is saying, I'm not going without you, And so it was a nice reminder that sometimes the content of the dialogue will tell us who people are, and we don't have to put a tag at all. Also, I think it was the third piece of dialogue when he said, can you move? And she said, where is it? And so that's a really cool technique that happens all the time in dialogue, is we're so committed usually as writers to have our people talk directly to each other and answer each other's questions. And this is sort of funny, but my first husband never answered a question I asked him with the answer I was looking for. And I didn't even notice it until my best friend told me. She's like, he never answers your question. And he didn't. And so I think it's a really interesting thing for dialogue to note that, you might say, hey, are you hurt? And the person coming back has a different priority. Where is it? So, or, can you move or whatever. So keep in mind that people do not always say the logical thing that comes next. In fact, they rarely do, right? Would you agree with that observation?
Yeah, no, I like that observation.
One thing I wanted to bring up that you all reminded me of while I'm thinking of it before I forget is what's happening that's so cool with both of these so far is that you have this sort of scene setting moment that could possibly either be right now or be almost any time. Like, so you're setting where we are, but we don't really get into scene until something is happening, right? And this is just true about stories. So in the Janet Fitch workshop I went to last weekend, she was talking about how as you're kind of getting your way into a story or a scene, you'll have these things that could happen at any time. Like, she usually washed the dishes first thing, but instead this morning, and as soon as you have that trigger that puts us in a moment, you're starting the scene, right? So in these cases, we had these awesome things where people were pretty much in this moment, but all that descriptive time with the action and the sensory detail was leading you to the dialogue that really was kind of the moment where emotional action was starting to happen. And she emphasized something that, we know, but it's nice to hear somebody who's paid for a living to do this stuff say. She emphasized how there's going to be an emotional change across a story, especially in a short story. A lot of times a short story will leave us hanging at the end in a way that a novel won't, and you don't have to do that. But what will happen is with the narrative arc, there's going to be an emotional arc, and somebody will change across the story, usually the protagonist. So if it's a different character in the story who experiences the big change, then probably you have the wrong protagonist, according to Janet Fitch. And I have to agree with her. And then on rare occasion, and this is a tiny occasion, the character or the person experiencing the change is intended to be the reader. Now that's, I don't know that any of us, I certainly don't have these skills yet. I don't know how to consciously write a story where I'm intending to change the reader. I know what I think that feels like, but I don't feel ready to pull that off. Maybe you can let me know. So you want to be sure that your protagonist, whoever is sort of the lead person in your story or thing or character has a change across the story. Maybe there's an epiphany, maybe it's a positive change, maybe it's a negative change, but they learn something new about themselves, the world, something by the end of the story. And what's super cool that she said, and this is something I'm trying to remember, as you have your characters go do something and you know what you think they're going to do, pause for a second and say, okay, 99% of the time that character would open that door but turn around and close it behind them. Let's choose the 1%, so I'm picking the example, this isn't her example, but the 99 and the 1%. Try writing the 1%. Try writing the weird thing that you wouldn't expect to have happen in the scene and see what that does to the narrative that you're writing. I thought that was amazing advice. So I've been trying, especially in like the morning meditation rites that I do with Peggy Dobrer. I've been trying to say, wait, what's the 1%? What's the 1%? How do I shake this up with something unusual? Okay, thanks for the opportunity to do the things that I was reminded of. Who would like to read? Kelly, okay, great.
Okay. Hugs were had. The fabric of his sweatshirt brushed against my arm, soft and cottony. His cologne had changed. It was sweeter now with a hint of jasmine. He took my luggage and I strode to the side door, opening the handle, a reflexed operation for my body to know how to operate. Once I was in the leather seat, buckled in, I had nothing else to mindlessly do. The trunk closed with a thunk, my palms still sweating despite the air conditioning going. Some pop song playing softly as I waited for the opening of the opposite door. So that was the scene. Dialogue. Are you as that? We overlapped as he was putting on his seatbelt. Are you hungry? I could eat, as my stomach rumbled, nerves running, ruining my appetite previously. How about a cafe? It'll help with the time difference and to tell your body it's morning. He turned with humor, dancing in his eyes. Sounds great. The smell of coffee filled my senses. I could practically taste and smell it, setting my body at ease. I know I broke the rules with dialogue. It just kept going. So.
What's my biggest rule about writing prompts with these when we do this?
I just write.
Yeah, there's no real rules. I make rules. That was great. That was really fun. Okay, everybody, what stood out?
I liked how they both started talking at the same time, and they each were asking a question at the same time, because that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Well, she incorporated a lot of senses in there. The touch of the clothing, the smell of the coffee, I like the anticipation of her waiting for the other door to open.
Nice. One of my favorite things in there was it'll get you used to the time zone. And I'm like, oh, where are they? Who went where? Somebody crossed an ocean. What's going on? Or a continent or whatever, right? Yeah, so that was a really neat clue too. Yeah, those are all great observations. And, you definitely have workable stuff in there, Kelly. It's like Nicole was saying, your instinct for what to do kicked in, right? And that's fine. I mean, the greatest thing about what we're doing here is that you're getting some writing down, but I'm also like playing around to get you uncomfortable to try to help you. See if it helps.
I thought that, I don't know if you can hear me still.
Yeah.
I thought that the word choice, which is something I think I pick up on because of military brat, is that people use different like the word cafe. In my head, I was like, oh, this must be like somewhere like foreign, because in America, I'm thinking like coffee shop or like corner store, or like how they have like different sayings.
Yeah, a diner. Yeah.
A diner, yeah. If someone said diner, I would think New York. So someone said like cafe, I'm thinking France. Someone like the coffee shop, I'm thinking like a hipster place. And so I think that cafe and in the time zone, they like mix together to make me think that maybe they weren't coming, like that person was coming from like America to France instead of like, oh, they're coming back to America. Right. They're going away from like. So I just thought that was like just even word choices sometimes can show what the author is thinking or where they're trying to place the story. And so
Yeah, good. Great observation. Kelly, where are they?
Germany, actually.
Oh,
Hey, hey, hey.
Yeah, I actually must email you asking, you don't have to, I'm not putting you on the spot here, of like just some questions that I can't Google or something like that. Yeah, they're in Germany. So yes, so I don't know if they do cafes in Germany. I was thinking Europe and I was like, cafe, because I try to keep my brain going because I didn't do that much research because I will go down a research hole very quickly. And I was like, that's not this assignment. So
yeah, nice.
They do cafes here. It's a German word that I can't pronounce. I have to get my Google Translate to figure it out. But yeah, they have little cafes, so you're good.
Okay, send her the name, Candy. Email her the name. Yeah, because I've emailed all of you at once, when you go in your email, it should auto-populate the person you're looking for because you've all shown up in emails together. So nice, great. Okay, who wants to go next? Okay, Mary.
Okay, I feel like mine's primitive compared to everyone else. So
we all
feel
have
free
these
to-
feelings, but no excuses. Go for it.
Okay, here's the description. Cammie walks into the therapy room for the second week. She looks around the room and there's 15 people sitting around the table or about to sit down. She overhears some of the conversations and knows some of the people already know each other. Cammie decides to sit near the tissue boxes, near one of the tissue boxes. She's not sure she's going to be able to speak again this week. The counselor starts by asking how everyone's week went. She turns to the person sitting next to the right. Now, this is the conversation. Cammie, how was your week? Marilyn touched Cammie's arm gently, knowing she was apprehensive. Cammie grabbed a tissue and the words flowed. I can't sleep. I toss and turn. I just keep wondering if I should have done something, had told someone. And the guilt is unbearable. And then I went through a bunch of now what. And then Marilyn takes Cammie's hand and gives it a squeeze. There was nothing you could have done. He was determined. People in hospitals managed to take their lives too.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
read out too.
That was powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that the physical touch is what got me. It was like when she asked, how are you doing? And she touched her. It was like, I think that sometimes when conversations, we touch each other without even like, oh, how are you doing? And you're just like, slap your friend on the shoulder or whatever. But like just the touch, it kind of almost is like in the tissue boxes, the comment about, oh, I sat next to the tissue boxes. I didn't know if I was going to speak. Like it puts you in the mindset. And so I liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't down your story. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
I want to go off with what he said, the touch. It was just the because I'm a person who doesn't like to be touched. Like whenever you go somewhere, you're just one of those people like, give me my you used to be 3 feet of space, now it's 6 feet. But I got when she gently touched her. It wasn't like she grabbed her or anything. She knew she was already anxious and apprehensive. So it was kind of like they already kind of had a connection because she knew kind of what she was going through. And she knew that, you just can't go and just, grab her hand or anything. You got to be very gentle with it. And that kind of got me like, okay, they know each other. They already have this connection. Where is this story going to go now? I just need to know how she's going to help her out.
Thank you.
And do y'all hear what's happening there? Like, listen to your readers building all this background out of the word choices that you're making, so we knew sitting by the tissue box was a big clue of how emotional she felt. Candy could tell by the nature of the touch, right? We picture just like a gentle, and almost like that touch could have released the flood of words that we heard from Cammie that we didn't know if Cami was going to be able to have. And so listen to the ways that your readers interact with your reading and how important, just a simple like addiction choice, right, can release something in your reader to understand your scene. And the way that we are always working in the context of humans, how we function as humans, you're relating that in your story. And it's causing this, because there much more of your story happened for all of us as readers than what you put on the page, right? And Desmond's right. Don't, it's so hard not to make excuses. I want to every time in the morning meditation, we read what we write, but try not to, because that was a really legitimate effort. And, try to feel confident in it if you can, because it was good.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Who's next? Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
I
My
never
breath
got to
hit.
meet you in person last class. This is fun.
No, I didn't, because I have normally during this time is I hold different groups for underprivileged in our area. And I either work on reading or writing, especially for high school students who are really struggling. But this week I was like, sorry, y'all. But then I got a call for one of my students. He's like, I have this application for some mentorship program. I was like, oh, okay, let me help you really quick, but I got to go to this thing.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I'm
sorry
running late.
at the same time.
No, it's fine. It's fine. He's fine. He's been texting me like, is this okay? So if you see me clicking or something,
Yeah, no worries.
because I'm doing like dual work here.
Yeah.
I'm like, because he has a deadline today. I was like, you waited till the last minute, but that's a whole nother story.
Sure. And it's great that you're helping him.
Yeah, and he's 15, so I give him leeway. Okay. My breath hitched when I pulled into the driveway that holds so many memories for me. As I get out of the car, I am assaulted by the fresh smell of pine and the hint of salt in the air. I had forgotten just how peaceful this place was. The swaying of the birch trees pulls my attention to the old tree house still holding onto the now overgrown branches. The porch is still the stained rust color that we painted it so many years back, and I can't help but wonder why. I walk up the driveway and am reminded of the crunching the rocks made when I was younger, running to check the mail. That was the first part. Then the second part. What are you doing here? My father coughs as he sits down on the old rocker. My head snaps up, pulling me out of my memories. You know why I'm here. Do I now? Looking in my direction with those mirrored blue eyes. Yes, Papa, I need your help. I look around the old porch while brushing off the leaves that have fallen onto the chair next to Papa. I heard that something happened and was wondering when you were going to call. Looking out over the overgrown yard, I know he is waiting. And then that was it. I couldn't get any more. I was like, oh, where am I going to go from here?
Very, very nice. Wow. Yeah. All right, everybody. What's there?
I felt like the words that were used, like at first I thought it was like, oh, like, a sense of uneasiness, because it was like, oh, my breath hitched when I pulled into the driveway. I was assaulted by the smell instead of like, it was like fresh pine, in the tree house. And I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be like beautiful. But like, no, like these words are telling me, no, it's like, this is not like as it's being read. And so it's like this double layer of like,
yeah,
someone being like, oh yeah, like, something is so beautiful, but then in reality, it's like very tragic. And so like, I think that's where it was being read. And then when the father entered, I was like, oh yeah, like there's definitely like a tension and like the mirrored blue eyes, like there was this connection, but also a disconnect with that too. And I think that the door, and someone had mentioned the door and the eyes and stuff like that. I forget what story it was, but that's what kind of reminded me, like Candy, it was your story. I was like how the eyes were like a connection. And so I think the mirrored blue eyes just kind of like, they were looking back into the eyes, but they were like not reflecting what he wanted to see or she wanted to see. And so I don't know. I think it was like, oh, okay, I would want to read more of it.
Who else noticed?
Same thing, that dual, two things happening at the same time. You see the tree house and then you're reminded, you have the nostalgia, you're feeling like you're transported back, but it's not all happy things. It's the childhood thing. So that's complex that way. And you already are setting up this complex relationship that they have with their father. And then the father shows up and you go, oh, the dialogue. I think it was another great example of dialogue where the words that they were speaking themselves were carrying so much weight and meaning. So you don't miss the dialogue tags or anything, but you kept the descriptions of what the eyes looked like while they were speaking, and it enhanced it rather, and it didn't pull me away, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I thought it all gelled really well in 5 minutes. Like, wow, good job.
Right? Yeah. Anyone else?
I think in the sensory details, there was like words that brought on, like you can say there were leaves on the ground and even describe them, but when you use words like crunch, like there's even more. So the certain words that you used when you described those things, they really brought on like a more of a connection to the experience.
And I'd like to point out that every word that you guys are emphasizing for the most part, y'all, is a verb, assaulted, crunched, and there was one more and I just forgot it. Mirrored is not, that was a descriptor, but the verbs are really what is showing us hitched. Yeah. So the verbs are showing us what's happening in the story and they're telling us how to take it in. We know that she has both affection for this place and she's nervous about this place, right? And one of the things that you didn't mention, but that I really thought was important, was the smell was of pine and salt. And immediately I was in like North Carolina. I don't know where this story is set, but something
Maine.
like Maine. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And so then I decided that the gravel she was crunching over was white because I put her in North Carolina. So
It actually is like, this is taken. So I pull a lot of my storytelling from my own experiences.
Yeah.
And when I was writing this, I was thinking of my childhood home. And it actually is white gravel that's on the ground.
How about that? Huh? So, and maybe that's a detail you want to add because I did get it right, but who knows what other people would do. So anyway, do you all see how important those verbs were for setting the mood and the tone of where she was? So those strong verbs really matter. Yes, the dialogue, those mirrored blue eyes did those two things, right? Because Desmond picked up on the idea that they're not going past the surface of like a glass mirror, but also they're the same, because they're father and daughter. So they're seeing the same. Oh, come on, people. What, a car can't drive by like a quarter mile away? Yeah, so they're the same eyes. So we see both like the coldness or the not being receptive to each other that the glass does, but we also know that they're a father and daughter who, at least in their eyes, look alike. So fun. That was fun. Thank you, Nicole. Good work. Like Jess said, like really in 5 minutes? Okay. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so the two people who haven't read are Jess and Jasmine. Do either of you want to read?
I will.
Okay, thanks, Jasmine.
Sure. The wailing ceased as I thought it never would. Finally, my world was quiet. Hearing my parents' voices as I helped deliver a child into this world had brought on a fresh wave of nostalgia as nothing had in these recent months. I pulled over the RV, making sure to secure it before reaching into the glove box for the Moroccan-style photo album I always kept near me. I opened to the pages to review the portals it held in its yellowing pages, remnants of a life that seemed too long ago to imagine sometimes. I traced my finger down my mother's smiling face. How often I remember her smiling, laughing. In my mind's eye, I saw her beyond the veil in a flowing white robe, smelling of fresh flowers, a smile on her face and a tear running down her cheek, which was screwed up in a look of longing. Mom, at the sound of my voice, hoarse, my throat clogged with tears, she looked startled. Bailey, she made a movement as though to cut my cheek, a gesture I know to be one of affection from her, but the separation of worlds kept her from making contact. Her hand would have been smooth, I can recall from memory. I miss you every day. I have so many questions for you. I don't know how to take care of a baby. I gestured toward the sleeping nameless infant in her car seat, stolen from a Walmart about 300 miles back. I didn't either, my love. I saw her eyes light up as she peeked her head towards the infant. She held such a maternal look in her eyes as though the infant was the granddaughter she'd never had. I was only 19 years old, for goodness sake. Will it ever get easier, Mom? She smiled indulgently. Life is what you make of it, Bailey. Live it, love it, learn from it. Love that baby the way I loved you, and you'll have a life worth living. She slowly backed up from the veil, leaving me once more alone with that sleeping baby.
So my internet was cutting out at some really key moments. I want to hear what everybody has to say and hear if I interpret it right.
What I liked about the beginning was there was a couple things. Finally, the world is quiet. So when you say the world is quiet, you could take it in several different ways. Like there's peace, but then is she talking metaphorically, or is she talking like in this moment, everything is silent? So when I think of that, I think of, is she just being herself and there's busyness going around her, or is it actually quiet? I like that. I like that phrase because you can play with it so much. And then the words that I really liked in the first were portals, yellowing papers. So when you describe something like that, you take yourself back into something really cool. So yellowing papers, you think of old, crumpling, like why would somebody keep something so old? You start questioning the writer, like this is a key thing, like why are these things important? And then the second one, I like how when your dialogue you said the veil, and how the separation of worlds. So it makes you as a reader think, is not knowing any contents of anything other than that, is the veil actually a literal veil, or it is a metaphorical veil? That was my biggest question. Like, wait, is it real, or is it like you're just having a conversation like that? I want to know more so I can understand like where the conversation comes from and all of it ties in.
So I was doing a continuation of the story snippet that I had put in for, like the assignment.
Mm-hmm.
So like in my head, we already knew all these things because I already summarized it. but yeah, so she it's a post like dystopian world. There's a virus, there's barely anyone left. Both of her parents have died, and she can hear their voices on her shoulders like angels. And so she just delivered this baby for this girl who had gotten bitten by the virus. She had contracted the voice virus. So now she has this baby that she doesn't know how to take care of, but she had responsibility to it because she's the only one there to take care of it. And so she gets to look at these photographs and come in with her mom, and she's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. So that was it.
I liked it a lot.
Thinking, well, thanks.
Yeah, I think I'd jump in and say that I think Nicole's saying that she'd like you to keep writing because she wants to know what's going on.
Yes.
What else? Anybody else notice anything? Yeah, so now that you gave me some of the summary, I thought she had stolen the child from a Walmart in what I heard, but even so, I knew that the motherly person, because of this veil, I thought I knew, that's a better way to put it, that she was some kind of ghostly figure. And so without knowing that she was on the girl's shoulder, she was so compelling because it was clear that the girl really wanted her mother there in this moment, and she wanted help and guidance on what she was supposed to do. So my heart is going out to this character. Like, I'm really excited about this character. And you already said you're not writing this story, right? Darn it.
Well, I might have to now because I don't know how I'm going to give dialogue to a road.
And I mean, it's definitely up to you, and you can be as creative as you want to. The thing that is important to keep in mind is that if you're having trouble doing something like dialogue or action, then it's possible that the story, I haven't read it yet, it's possible that the story doesn't have the kind of things that like work in this scenario for a short story. I mean, like, the greats get away with doing experimental stuff all the time. Snoo is teaching you to write a traditional story. So it may be that you want to practice traditional to make your non-traditional more, I was going to say more better. Which is so wrong. Oh, at least I know it was wrong. So those are some thoughts that you could have. And I agree with everything that Nicole said. And I love this idea for a brief second, because I didn't know, and my internet cut in and out, when she said that she knew that she was reaching out to cup her cheek and what her hand would have felt like. That was a great moment of nostalgia. Like I could just feel the longing for this girl and this connection with, now I know, sort of like an angel on her shoulder is so real and palpable. And yet we all kind of know that also, she's just thinking through what she's learned from her parents, right? I mean, like, they're not probably really, are they really there? Or are they
No,
just
they're not really there.
okay?
It's like she's cracking up because she's been alone for so long.
And that's super viable. I mean, because when we enter the world, and she sounds like she's very young, when we enter the world, we start with everything our parents taught us, right? So of course they're on her shoulder. Yeah, I'm excited about that story. It's up to you, but that one sounds really fun. I mean, I haven't read it yet. I'll let you know in a little while. And I should have this grading done today. And you should see the grades post sometime later today for the milestone, and then I'll get to the discussion boards. It's been an interesting week. It takes me 7 hours round trip to drive my husband to the airport, so that day was lost entirely. Okay, so it's like 3.5 hours to the airport, but it's beautiful here, isn't it?
It is.
But it's, you have your payoffs, right? Thanks, Jasmine. Jessica, do you want to read?
I don't. Yeah, if people don't mind me taking extra time.
Yeah, I know
we're
we're going
gonna
to
hear it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. Dieter sat down at the kitchen table and tapped his fingers on his coffee mug that was still hot and steaming. He watched his wife Helen twirl through the kitchen, sending plates and cups into the cupboards high above her head with a wave of her hand. He munched on his bacon and poked at the 2 eyes of sunny-side-up eggs on his plate. Helen smiled at him and continued to clean. He set his fork down until she wiped her hands on her apron and sat down next to him. She peered at him with the bright green eyes of a cat, and he sighed. She reached across the table to hold his hand and scooted his plate closer to him. He begrudgingly finished his food, and she moved to stand, but he held on to her hand so she couldn't leave. Standing, she hugged his head and pat his back. And then my dialogue was the same scene.
Yeah. Okay.
How's work going? Helen flicked her wrist and 2 small plates flew up like frisbees to find their homes on the shelf. It's okay. Dieter's mouth was full of toast. Just okay? Yeah, I mean, nothing to complain about. Work is work. Still, he poked at his eggs. Are you feeling down again? Helen sat next to him. I don't know. I guess I'm just not used to this. Helen smiled. I understand. It must be a lot. But at least you have a job, and you have me. Dieter didn't smile back, but squeezed her hand. I've been thinking. Be careful, dear. She stood. I know.
Oh, what's even thinking?
That's all I got.
Right,
That's
I'm
all I got.
nervous. I'm nervous for Helen.
Yeah, at least you've got me. Squeeze.
Right, I've been thinking. That's not. It's like we've got to talk. It's one of those phrases.
Yeah.
What else did you notice, everybody?
I'm not sure if it was like it was kind of giving me like either Harry Potter, like when she would when the thing was flying in, or like Studio Ghibli, where like I don't know, I was imagining everything in the house kind of alive, and she's just like dancing around, and this husband is like kind of like, oh, he married her and then he found out that she was like a witch, and he was like, well, I've been thinking of leaving, and she was like, be careful, because you're going with me or you're against me. And like I was like, but it seems so like light, like it's still like that last sentence seemed like it added a bit of heaviness to the story, where it was like we can be happy, like, but if you leave, like, that's when it's not. And like I don't know, that's the kind of sense I got.
So
Yeah, that
background, if it
underlying
helps.
sense of a threat, right?
Yeah, so I guess background, if it helps, is that the whole story is kind of this dark light thing because she's a witch and there's recently been a war and now the witches are in charge of the world. So now like the hierarchy has switched. Instead of the witches being in hiding, they're out in the open. And him being just a human is now kind of a second class citizen. So he's struggling with being seen as this lesser being, um, and that kind of thing.
So it's kind of like the reverse of Bewitched, like the TV show.
I never saw it, so yeah.
Oh man, I watched that every day when I was a kid because I'm old. So it's an idea of, I mean, if I were to put it into today's sort of lexicon, you've got maybe a white male who's feeling like his power is being taken away from him, which is a really interesting place to take it. And I love that we had these little clues that we were in a different kind of world. Like the plates move like frisbees. We know that then this is literally happening. And that's the indicator that some kind of magic is happening without you saying, you know, I said, I'm going all bewitched. She wrinkled her nose and they moved, you know, because that's how she used it. I don't know how she did that. That actress was amazing. So one of the things I want to ask you all, because this was really kind of fun. So most has Mary, yeah, okay. Most people didn't talk about their summaries, and then Jasmine and Jessica did. And my question is, do you think you could get a sense of what all the stories were without hearing the summaries?
I think you could get a vague inkling, but without context, you're not going to know exactly what the story's about.
Right, not exactly, but like when we heard Jasmine and Jessica give their backgrounds or their, you know, like what else there was to know about the story, it matched, right? Like we're like, oh yeah, you know, I could totally see this story is going this way, right?
Mhm.
So I guess what I was going to point out is just how important it is to have those clues happening, even in a tiny little portion of a bigger story, always having your mind pushing towards the bigger idea, right? Towards the potential in what your whole story is supposed to have in it. So when you write that summary, when people are being graded on whether their narrative arc fit in the summary or not, that would be one of the things that I'm grading on. I'm really gentle actually on this assignment because everybody writes me teasers instead of summaries. So I'm supposed to know what happens in the whole story. Like what's the whole narrative arc? And almost nobody has told me what's happening in the whole story. I don't know if you have, because of course I haven't graded any of you yet. I'll go the other way before the next time we do this. And then they don't always tie it into that narrative arc because I don't know what the whole narrative arc is. So the scene does match with the tease they gave me, but I really don't know what's going to happen. So, and these are little details. Like for example, if you were trying to sell a book to an agent, you actually do, you know, your letter gives away everything that happens. You know, you don't write a teaser to them. You tell them how the whole thing happens when you're trying to get an agent or a publisher. And so like, those are the little details you have to learn, you know, different things that will, you know, every agent, as Janet said in this workshop, is looking for a reason to turn you down because they have so many people coming in. So unless you're just captivating them by the second, they're like, nope, this person didn't even realize I need to know how this thing ends. They're out of here. You know, like they need to have you have the profession under your belt enough to trust you and keep going with your work when they have so many to get through. So little things like that's why we have you format your papers correctly, because that may not be the exact format people are looking for, but they'll tell you what the format should be, and you should be able to change everything to look correct. So we practice it by having you use MLA for this one, right? These were so exciting. I can't wait to grade your work because I can tell I'm interested in all your stories. So I'm sorry I've been so slow this week. It's no excuses. It's happening. Do you have questions for me? Would you like to do this again down the road?
Yes, definitely.
I have to look at the schedule again. Right now I'm living kind of like what's happening tomorrow. But the next time that we have another draft due is usually when I would do this, because it helps you write towards the thing you're going to write. And I feel like you might be writing something next week. So let me look and then I'll
We,
send out an
I
email.
think
think the whole rough
Sunday
draft is
is
due.
when our rough draft is due.
Mhm.
Okay, good. So, yeah, no, I mean, I chose this one because you have a rough draft due and what we did today would help you with that rough draft. Hopefully, you don't have to use anything from today. I'm just trying to help. And then module 5, let's do module 5.
It's just a short paper.
Okay, so that's not creative. So probably leading into module 6 will so at the end of module 5, because this is the end of module 3, right? So at the end of module 5, would you like to think about possibly doing it again?
Yeah.
And well, I'm sorry about the timing, but I do record them. So like if you want to come visit, if you can't make it,
Well,
I
now
will.
now that school has, and like I'm done with school teaching. So I'm
Okay.
just doing workshops. So unless like one of my students need, like today, Chris was
Yeah.
like, hey, I need this. Then no, I'm flexible all summer now.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, then
I am
we'll
going to propose an addendum to the rubrics because I read the syllabus before we even started this class. And so I was coming up with ideas before we even started. There were no parameters. Nothing was mentioned about needing dialogue or anything like that.
oh, in the syllabus.
Yeah. So then, I read the rubric for the final paper. There are still no parameters. And so I was like, I can write about anything. And now I have a story that's unusable.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, I do recommend in your future new courses, to like hold off and you guys can't see the learning modules, can you? No.
No. 2 weeks before,
oh.
right?
Well, but I mean, the individual learning modules don't open up to you until
Oh,
the day.
You can
Right.
you can see everything except for the discussion boards.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I do recommend you just look ahead in your future classes and see what you're going to be assigned to do, because that'll help you. But if you're trying to get ahead before the class starts, yeah, the syllabi are really generic. And one of the things I think they do, because I can't see the class, I mean, I can now that I've taught it, but before I taught it for the first time, I also can't get into the class. And so I don't know what's coming in the learning modules until they give me access to the class. And I think the reason they make the syllabus generic is because somebody could take it and try to build their own class off of it, right? So they don't want to give away all their secrets if somebody was trying to do a business on the side with it, which is why I'm very careful in Birch Bark editing not to do the direct class I'm teaching at SNU, or like I do, like there is a reading like a writer thing that I do with Birch Bark editing, and I use none of the same materials, none of the same exercises, because I don't want there to be any question. Plus I have my own way I would teach the class, but that's another thing. Anyway, I don't want there to be any question that I'm doing my own work instead of borrowing from SNU and doing, taking their stuff. So yeah, well, you inspire me as always. It's really fun to see what's going on inside your heads like this, and to imagine like we have a whole world of people out here who think like this. It's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to finishing your grading, and I bet you're looking forward to me finishing your grading. And most of the stuff I talked about today is the kind of stuff that you're going to hear in the feedback, but it'll be very specific to your own work. So I gave you all the advice I've been giving so far in the grading that I've done. So it's going to be a second time, but it'll be yours to keep and be able to apply to your own work. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, please know that I'm always available. And if you have serious questions or whatever, we can always pop back into Zoom one-on-one. We can have a phone call. I can talk to you on email. I'm around my computer a lot. And if I reply on my phone, forgive me for all the typos, but there will be a ton of them. So, because I usually do it without my glasses and then it's just a mess. So, all right. It was so great to see you this morning. I just love getting to know you guys, and my keyboard.
Oh,
You're mute.
I don't even know I did it. I'm kind of impressed with myself. I wish I could figure out how to do that all the time. Anyway, okay, so I'm also in the meeting. It was great to see you all, and we'll probably see you in 2 weeks.
Yep. Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye,
you.
y'all. Thank you.
Everybody take care. It's great to see you.